to you guys a little bit. I mean, everybody knows what formative assessment is. But I kind of went through and had a little refresher for myself and went a little more in depth into formative assessment that how can we change it? And I think this time of year is a good time to talk about formative assessment because it's so focused around that darn summative assessment, those big tests. And those matter, of course they do, but every day matters more, and that's what this is about. So, the first thing that I thought of, actually, when I was reading in this book that Miss Hudson gave me was the mindset that we have towards it and towards teaching. And this was a big revelation I had this summer, actually, during these classes. And if you just read that, if I had to reduce all the research on feedback into one simple, overarching idea, at least for academic subjects in school, it would be this: feedback should cause thinking. And I'm not sure, and this is just talking about myself as a teacher, if my feedback on my formative assessments actually causes thinking. This book talked a lot about it causing an emotional reaction. And I think that our 6th grade dip, that thing just bothers me so bad. Why kids come from that elementary school doing so well, and they get here, and they just, 7 years in a row we've seen a dip. And I actually researched quite a bit of it this summer, and one of the coolest ideas that I thought of and did a little work on was that we go from a mastery mindset, where kids are just expected to learn the material, to a performance mindset, which is what kind of score did I get? And I think that happens when they hit the middle school level. And this, to me, can be changed with our formative assessment. Instead of giving them the score back and then thinking, what did I get on it? And then this book in there, it said, the next thing they think of is, what did everyone else get on it? Instead of, what did I learn and what am I missing? And so that mastery mindset, I think, could help us if we could incorporate that into our everyday formative assessments and how we're seeing if kids are learning. And Shannon and I always talk about the standard-based grading and how helpful that would be with this, because I would fully support the formative assessment. So right now I feel like we're kind of grading our apples with oranges a little bit with our grade scale and what we want to get done. So that is out of that book. It's actually really interesting. Some things, this is more of a refresher than anything else, but how and when do you formatively assess? And there are 3 different forms: the obtrusive, inobtrusive, and the student-generated. And to me, the obtrusive is the one we always fall back on. That's like the planned quizzes and the presentations, demonstrations, those things that we plan in and we intrude into our daily lesson plan to get them done. And so I feel like we do those a lot. What we don't give enough credit to is the unobtrusive ones, which are just us observing things. So we're watching the kid do a science lab, and we're noticing that they're understanding which step to put next. We don't give them credit for knowing it at that point. They have to be able to do it on our obtrusive test to be able to get credit for it. So we need to make sure that we're understanding that they're still learning, even if you're formatively assessing inobtrusively. Number one is the student-generated, and I forget, somebody was presenting this. I'm kind of in a fog from the whole year, honestly, but about student-generated assessments and how kids can tell you if they know it or not, and they can tell you how they're going to show you if they know it or not. And that one to me is terrifying at the middle school level, because we're giving the reins over to an 11-year-old kid who can barely sit in their chair. But it is interesting, because I've done this a few times where you just give them the list of things they can do, and then if they pick it, it's pretty cool to see what they can do if you are up for giving them the reins. Number one thing about formative assessments is, how do you use the data? So we can do all these things, we're told to do all these things, but how do we use it? If everybody is taking on a topic, do we stop and reteach, or do we push on because the curriculum says we need to? So that's the most important thing: is, do we know where our kids are at, and then how are we going to use that data? All right. Okay, so this is the thing I was going to show you, but of course it doesn't work. I tried to print it last night, but it didn't print. So this is really cool, and I was thinking about different kinds of formative assessments, and the thing to me is like every day I'm going to have to grade something, and it makes me want to cry a little bit. So this kind of stuff, I love to incorporate these kind of things in it. So I have the clicker system, which I know I'm lucky because not everyone in this school has that thing. And we've always talked about using their phones or using their devices, but we have a third of the kids that have them and 2/3 that don't, and so how do you incorporate all that into it? So I found this program, it's really cool, it's called Clickers. And these are the little, this is like their, what would be equivalent to their remote. So, and they're all shaped differently, which I think is really cool too, so no one can look around and see what everybody else is putting up. And so this is their way to put their answers in, and all you have is you turn it on and you have your phone, and it just reads them. Or your iPad, since we all have iPads, they would definitely work with those. And so you just turn it on and then you ask the question, and whichever they put up is their answer for it. And they're all shaped differently, and so it records it right in there, and you just print a report or just put it right in your grade book, just like that. Or you just look at it. It's really cool on here. I was going to show how it has each kid's name, and then it shows which ones they're getting right and wrong. So you can sit there and say, okay, this kid is really struggling today, and you can go help them right then, instead of 3 days later after you've graded their paper in the middle of the night. So anyway, this is formative assessment. I used Marzano, because he does everything. And this Dylan Williams book, which is really a good one if you want to check it out. Okay.